time of the week, the Climax-Scotts fight song fades, and you are now neck deep in the newest episode of Climax the Podcast, Love Letter to a Small Town. As always, proud 1998 Climax-Scotts grad Kevin Harvey here as your host, and hopefully this is a welcome back for just about everybody listening. Welcome back from episode 7 last week, fresh derriere with Dwayne Drawlett Jr., one of our most popular episodes to date. If you're a veteran listener of this podcast, this is nothing new. If you're new, you should know we get the business done up front here on Climax the Podcast. First off, anything about this show, listening to the show, supporting the show, buying our merchandise, everything under the sun, you can find all the links and ways to do that at climaxthepodcast.com. I've done my best to make it as easy as possible for even the most technologically challenged of individuals to listen to the show. It's available on basically every podcast platform on the face of the earth, but you can always just go to climaxthepodcast.com and there's a giant click here to listen button. It even jumps up and down on the page. Then I always like to throw out a reminder of that support button. This show is free to listen to, but it's not a free show to produce. If you're able to, no guilt trip here. If you want to toss a couple of bucks, if you're able, you can do that right there on climaxthepodcast.com. It helps keep the lights on, so to speak, for this podcast. And of course, we've got to show some love for our sponsors and those who help keep this show going. First up, Kristen Wachowski from State Farm. Kristen's office is in Battle Creek, just off the intersection of Columbia and 20th Street. She's across the street from Ollie's, and she's behind Chicago Title. And now, Kristen's going to be even easier to find because I saw she got her new signs installed this week. Congrats, Kristen, on upgrading your signage over there at the office. I've had an unfortunate amount of times I've had to use insurance in my life. Car accidents, I had a house fire in 2015. And I'll tell you, having somebody that you can trust in making sure you're taken care of for those processes, it's something you don't know how important it is until the moment you have to utilize that insurance. I've known Kristen since she was a kid, and I trust her implicitly to take care of your insurance needs, whatever they may be. Auto insurance, homeowners insurance, condo insurance, renter's insurance, business insurance, life insurance, and more. You can give her a call today, 269-968-5130, or get in touch with her through her website, callkristen.com. That's callkristen, KRISTIN.com. In this show, especially episodes like this one, would not be possible without our access to the archives from Prairie Historical Society. For several decades now, PHS has documented the history of the towns of Climax and Scotts, and there's so many ways that they can support this town, this community, and anything you might want to learn about anybody or any business or anything inside the town. And I just got a sneak preview of this month's newsletter, and let me tell you, I know a lot about Climax, and I learned several things I had no idea about. You can always check out the PHS archives in the History Room at Lawrence Memorial Library. And to become a member of Prairie Historical Society and to get those newsletters, you can send your $15 annual dues to Prairie Historical Society, 107 North Main Street, P.O. Box 82, Climax, Michigan, 49034. And of course, the best way to keep up with all the goings-on in the Climax-Scotts community is the Climax Crescent. Bruce and Crystal Roth hard at work every week getting the news out there to the folks of the town. If you still want to get the paper delivered to your home every week, $31.25 for an annual subscription. If you're like me and live far away and you don't quite have the patience to wait for that paper to come in the mail, or maybe you just don't want to have the physical paper, you can get the e-edition, also $31.25, or you can get the combo platter, as I like to call it, where you'll get the paper and the digital copy, $36.25 a year for both. I want to let everyone know we've got coming fairly soon a special coming out that particularly kids of the 90s and especially music kids of the 90s are probably going to enjoy. A couple of tapes that I've unearthed that I've just started the process of capturing. Not necessarily going to be a podcast episode, but more of a musical special coming up. A number of you have already joined the new Facebook group that we have, Climax Tonight, Climax the Podcast live streams. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit more about that on the front end of this episode. Essentially, there are just so many guests who I think would be great guests for Climax the Podcast, but getting me in front of them with a microphone and doing a face-to-face interview is not the most realistic thing. I'm still living in the Chicago area. There's folks who I may not be able to get to Climax on their schedule, or there's some people that live pretty far away. I'm not going to drop hints. I've got 2 or 3 specifically in mind that I think are amazing guests for Climax the Podcast, but this is going to be the best way that we can make that happen. I wanted to just do this through the main Climax the Podcast Facebook page, but you can't even get the live button until you have something like 10,000 followers, and something that just is not a realistic number for Climax the Podcast at the level that it is right now. I mean, I think if everybody in town liked the page twice, I think we'd still be a couple people short, right? But these live streams, I'm still testing the groundwork. Basically, I can host live streams through my personal Facebook. I can set them up as events in this group, the Climax Tonight, Climax the Podcast live streams group, and then that I can share from the page. So it's essentially a domino effect where I can go live with basically anybody that we may want to have as a guest on the show, and with a couple of clicks of a mouse or taps of a phone screen, we can make that happen. Now, the other thing that I'm kind of excited about that I think adds a layer of interest here is when you do a live stream on something like Facebook, there's an interactive chat, so that will also enable the audience to ask some questions. And I think with, in particular, one of the guests I have in mind to sort of pilot this program, I think that's going to be a really fun and key thing that's going to make these a very special part of Climax the Podcast. Now, in addition to that, this isn't going to be something completely different. It's going to be very fun to catch live, but if you happen to not be available when it's live, we're still going to put it out as podcast content. These will be video streams, so they'll end up on the YouTube channel. So if you don't necessarily want one more thing to try and follow the show, you won't need it. Eventually, you'll get all that content the same way you're getting this episode right now. And then a reminder, Sunday, May 28th, Memorial Day weekend, Founders Day weekend, we're going to do Climax Tonight with a live studio audience, and that can be you listening right now. I've just started to send out some feelers about folks I'm trying to pursue for this live special. Once I've got a few more things concretely in place, you're going to find out more details about attendance and times and places and guests and everything you might want to know. This is going to be your chance to be live in studio at the Climax-Scotts Junior Senior High School Cafetorium. It's going to be a fun time. Everything about Memorial Day is a fun time. And then, of course, the next day, we're going to meet everyone in the middle. And now let's get into this week's main event with guest interviewers, Peggy Jenkins and Theta Taylor, and their guest, Lydia Nickerson. Now, I do not know an exact date of this recording. They almost say it. They even start off, today is April 7th, and then they just kind of get into the conversation. I have no idea what year this was. I speculate that it's around 1989 or 90. As I re-listened through the recording with all of you this week on the podcast, maybe that date's in there, but I think this is around the late 80s, very early 90s. I know I learned a lot listening to this recording, and I know all of you are too, and to me growing up, Lydia was the oldest lady in town. She lived to be 104 years old, and there's just so much to learn and appreciate about her contributions to the town and the youth over the years. Now, as has been the case with a couple of these historical archives, this recording is going to have kind of an odd break in the middle where the conversation just kind of trails off and they had to switch sides of the tape and things like that. So somewhere right in the middle, you're going to hear a random little music loop that I'm basically just using to cover the break and the changing of the tapes. And then the conversation with Peggy and Lydia kind of reaches a little bit of a sudden stop as they run out of tape at the end. And like I've said in prior episodes, there's only so much I can do when the recording is as it was in whatever year this was recorded. I can't go back and give them more tape or stop the tape at a better time. Now, this episode, as you've probably noticed by its timestamp, is the longest episode of Climax the Podcast to date. This is coming out much later this week than most weeks because I was expecting this recording to be maybe 30 to 45 minutes long, and it was in excess of 90 minutes or so. And I know that's the case this week, and it's the case with the next interview that I have in the can ready to go. Now, you folks listening can let me know, is this maybe too long for one episode? Would you rather have it broken down into two parts? Next week's episode, the interview alone is a very similar length to this episode before editing. Now, I'm just trying to find out, would folks listening to this podcast rather have it all at once, or maybe broken into two episodes? Think about that as you listen to this week's main event of Season 1, Episode 8, Head, Heart, Hands, Health, with Peggy Jenkins, Theta Taylor, and Lydia Nickerson.
Lydia Nickerson, Theta Taylor, Peggy Jenkins, to talk with Lydia about our 4-H days. This is April 7th today, isn't it?
Well, I mean,
yeah.
in the beginning. Now, I had...
Well, here's something that goes back to 1937 when we
Well,
had,
that sounds about right, doesn't it?
when we had the achievement over at Western.
Well, you see, I went down to New Carlisle, and my cousin, don't tell me that's recording what we're saying.
Okay, I won't tell you.
And she was in 4-H, that is, she was teaching 4-H. And I had never knew nothing about it, you know. And I was so pleased that then I came back and went up here to the PTA and spoke about it. And of course, always the first thing you know, you're in it.
Yeah, right.
And now you and Betty graduated in 41, and this was before you.
This says organized May 20th, 1936. Right?
That sounds about right.
Right,
Yes, that
because
does.
we would have been in prior to this spring achievement.
Yeah,
And we used to meet at school, didn't we? In the home ec room or something like that.
Well, first, you know, that first summer, you did cooking,
Yeah,
and that was here.
yeah.
And then that was so many of them, so many people working, and I don't believe I had cooking only that one year, or that one summer.
I remember.
And then you spoke about, what's her name that you,
Arlene Farouk?
yeah, I kind of think she took over the cooking, didn't she?
I had her for sewing right
Oh,
across
did
the
you?
street here in that big level elder home.
Well, I don't know, but you say
1936, huh?
and that sounds about reasonable.
Yeah, it does.
That it was organized.
Mm-hmm.
And that, read that to what it says.
Following the annual Kalamazoo County 4-H Club Achievement Day held March 26th at Western State Teachers College, local club achievement days are being planned in the various schools having 4-H clubs for recognition of their honor members and the award of certificates to students who have completed their club projects. Names of the honor members of the local clubs are reported Wednesday by County Agriculture Agent R.L. Oles, as chosen by the state club specialist P.G. London and Miss Beatrice Boyle, Michigan State College. And
Now was Miss Boyle that little tiny dark-haired woman that was along with?
could be, I can't remember
She
her.
was just about your size and worked with Miss Lindsay.
Probably. Mhm. That, I wouldn't remember her.
I don't remember the name.
And they had handicraft and
That was,
in different schools.
and that was an achievement.
Yeah, Kalamazoo 4-H honor members are announced, and that was the achievement day.
Any Climax honorees in there?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see. Climax School, Mrs. Lydia Nickerson, leader. Maxine Cotton, Theta and Margaret Roof, Doris Russell, Ardith Jones, and Betty J. Nickerson.
Have they got Jane?
No, just J.
Oh, Jay.
Mm-hmm. So that was for Climax.
Well, now, was that sewing or was that,
That must have been sewing. Now, I don't know. Doesn't seem to say.
I think I started darning socks right here, and then I went over there to make my first dress.
Now, what did we have to make to begin with? Didn't we make?
apron, wasn't it? An apron?
Didn't we make towels? I'm still
Yeah.
using them.
Yes.
I got mine right there.
Yeah, mine's yellow like that,
There's a gob on one of them, but I had to bring them anyway.
and I use them.
That was-
One had to be hand done and one had to be machine
Machine
stitched.
Mm-hmm. And back then, I don't think we made aprons, did we?
No, we darned the sock and did the towels.
Oh, yeah, that sounds right.
And your darning was all this way and then
All right.
no fooling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's my Betsy Ross shears. Remember those we had?
Oh. Yeah.
And the thimble, Grandma Ramble gave us a thimble.
Oh, I'm still using mine
Yeah.
she gave me. That's silver, isn't it?
Yeah,
Well,
and I had to bring those to show
that's
you.
like a little silver thimble, but mine has got a hole in it.
Oh.
Is this your,
That was the first dress I made, yeah.
did you smock it?
I did buttonhole stitch around the collar and the little cap sleeves, I
Yeah.
remember. I don't know, I didn't smock it.
I think mine was yellow, had little cap sleeves.
Well, Betty made Jessie a smock dress. She's smocking them just
Oh, yeah.
Just
Oh.
That's nice. I never got onto that
You
very
know
good.
that, I got this book just to try to keep. See, I've never seen. There's Jessie and Josh.
Oh.
I've never seen Jessie. She's 5 years old, but she looks to me like an awful long-legged child for 5 years. And Josh is 14, and he's 6 foot tall.
Oh,
Now,
boy.
These are Betty's?
Yes, Josh, of course, is.
Kids.
And Jessie is. See, Josh's father died when he was 5 with cancer. Melanoma cancer, you see.
Oh,
Betty was alone, or Claudia. And then Jessie is a baby 5 years old that came along, with a fellow that she was living with.
Oh, so these are Betty's grandchildren.
Yes, Betty and Carol has been to Colorado. They just got back.
Yeah.
That's one thing that you can look at all of them. This is Josh. Josh is surely a handsome.
Yeah. Tall fellow then.
And here she's whistling at her toad or her frog.
Oh, this is a cute picture.
Betty has children that she
Sits with
Sits
them.
with.
babysits.
Oh.
But she did have some babies, but she doesn't take them anymore. Now this is a dress that Betty made her for Christmas. Doesn't she look like a tall child for
Yeah,
5 years?
she does. Yeah, she must be.
Well, how many children did Betty and Carol have then? Claudia and...
Claudia and Curtis and Craig.
Oh,
Yeah, I've got baby or young pictures of them that she sent on a Christmas card.
I guess I haven't. Here's a later picture. I've asked Claudia to not. I don't need any gifts, and I can't send them anything except in checks because you certainly can't keep up with.
Yeah, what
With
you
people
don't.
that you don't see, and every kid now has his own idea of what he wants, and you
Yeah.
just try. So,
Finding that true.
so I just send checks. But I ask that for all I want is pictures because I can't keep up with them if I don't have pictures.
so Jinx's mom says, well, she likes postage stamps too. She likes to have people give her those.
Oh, especially the
Yeah.
special ones.
Well,
Any.
anything.
Yeah, she collects them then.
No, just to use.
No. Oh, I see.
Oh, you
to
mean
use.
usable ones?
Yeah.
Well, I did mail a package to Claudia yesterday, and because her birthday is Saturday, she'll be 42,
Oh.
and
Wow.
it weighed a pound and an ounce, and they told me up here I could send it as first class mail for $2.45, and if you paid for it by postage, I guess it was more than that. I just think it's ridiculous.
Oh,
That's,
I
for one
know.
thing, I'm not going to be mailing things because just think of that, 246 for just a package.
Yeah, too much.
Well, certainly, you buy 4 postage stamps for $1.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that,
the next time you turn around, they're gone.
yeah. It won't last long, that's for sure.
Well,
Yeah.
So,
it was organized then in 1936. I don't have any record of the first ones we had.
the only thing I have is a picture of, I know Maxine Cotton's in it, Art Jones is in it,
And Leella.
Leo, I think. I think I got 2 pictures. Plus, I've got some pictures that were taken at Michigan State.
Here are the first officers, right here. Maybe you want to read those,
How
Theta.
happened you had
Well, that's what was in the crescent that Neva and I put together out of her collection.
well, I
And
know
this is more of it here, I think.
Oh, this is one of the pictures that I think I have. Maybe not.
So maybe you want to read those first officers there.
Miss Margaret Menzel. But you know, and I was a leader for 5 years.
You were a leader longer than that, weren't you? I thought
No, you see, I took you girls through when you graduated.
I was thinking I was in my 7th year when I quit.
Well, I can't.
So maybe,
You must have been. I had 5 years and you started before
Yeah. I don't know.
Well,
there's no
maybe I
year.
did.
Because there's the last thing I made, that white formal.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that I was a senior then.
Well, you.
17 years old you were, says. $14.
You know that, and Betty's was a pink lace.
Formal that she made.
No, it wasn't a formal. It was just a
Short
short
dressing
dress. And
dress.
I have that picture somewhere, but I don't know where it is.
Did you make this poster?
I think that was part of the requirements.
How come your name's spelled like that?
Don't ask me. I must not have made it. I probably did make it.
You wouldn't do that.
It's wrong in the... Huh. I never...
Well, I know that
It's nice writing.
I must not have done it.
Neva, they had farm stuff too, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah. Here's...
And went into that more as
Right.
well. This is wonderful that you've got this because I really haven't any President Margaret Poling. For heaven's sake.
Yeah.
Betty Jean, Virginia Knaus, Theta Ruff, Elaine Sinan, Ellen Henshaw. Now
I
I
don't
place
remember her either.
I can't place her. The name is familiar. Esther Drollett, for land's sakes. Maxine Knaus, Betty Lou Lanko, Ardith Jones, Harriet Piper, Lillian Peckham, and Leella Bates. In 37, Mrs. Nickerson had clothing 21 members, was assisted by Arlene, how do you pronounce that, Arlene?
Brew.
Peru.
Brew.
Mrs. Enid Harrison, food preparation, for heaven's sake. That must have been when she lived down here in
It
the
is.
Crescent.
Yeah.
Cooks, 9 members. Mrs. All Jones, food preparation. Climax. Cooking club members. L.C. Nickerson, handicraft. Well, that must have been up to the school. This other stuff, I just don't.
think I can remember going up to school
Well, I just...
That's the...
to do some,
Oh, there, that was the picture
yeah.
I was looking for. Yeah.
Well, have you got some memories of some things that happened while we were working here? Little stories that might be good to remember?
Do you still
Well-
have the old treadle machine?
No, I had it, of course, my machine was a new home that was a wedding gift from my folks in 22.
Oh.
And I treadled that several miles. And then later, I think I had it, it was still just the treadle machine while I had 4-H.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had it made electric. That is that same machine. And Roberta Way bought the old machine when I bought a new electric machine.
Oh.
But mine is still, well, here it is right out there in the dining room, you know, in the case or in the...
You suppose Roberta still has that?
I don't know.
Huh.
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised because she never, you know, she's worked and everything.
Yeah.
Says you girls will make the second trip to Chicago within 3 years as reward for their outstanding 4-H club. Did you go 2 years or 2 times to Chicago?
I think so. I think I did, and I think Betty went 1 year when I didn't go.
Oh,
I have a picture of them leaving on a train. Well, county winners of Kalamazoo Gazette.
well, I'm awfully glad you girls have got this because you certainly got a lot more to go on than I have.
Betty Jean Nickerson wins trip to Chicago. Betty Jean Nickerson, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Guy Nickerson, was one of 2 from Kalamazoo County privileged to enjoy a trip to Chicago through the courtesy of the Kalamazoo Gazette as a winner of the 4-H Achievement Day held at Scotts, October 28th, and sponsored by the Gazette.
What year?
Well, it doesn't give a year, but written on here is 1938, so
Okay.
that sounds about right.
Yeah.
That's good.
They were accompanied by Mr. and Mrs. R.L. Olds of Kalamazoo. A special bus took, beside the 2 winners from Kalamazoo County, 2 from Van Buren County, 2 from St. Joe County, also winners in the Gazette Achievement, and 22 from the County 4-H Club of Berry County, and 10 future farmers of America from Hastings. They left Saturday morning, arriving in Chicago in late afternoon. While in Chicago, they attended the WLS Barn Dance Show, visited the Field Museum, WGN, and Chicago Tribune, the planetarium, and attended sessions of the 4-H Club Congress and saw exhibits at the International Livestock Exposition, also some of the city, besides many other interesting things. They returned home Tuesday night. I remember going to one banquet that was put on. This wasn't the year that Betty went, it was the year that I went. And they served us breakfast. We had grapefruit. I'd never eaten grapefruit before, and I didn't like grapefruit. All of a sudden, you don't want to be embarrassed, so you eat it. And I've liked grapefruit ever since.
The trouble with me, I'm so fond of grapefruit, and the doctors have taken it away from me.
Oh, did they have it all cut for you so you could
No,
scoop it out
well,
easy?
Probably did you
That
stick
I-
it in your eye?
Probably. I can't remember that part. But then I remember going to one of these big hotels.
The Drake, probably.
No,
Oh, no,
I don't
there-
think it was the Drake. It was, anyway. The other thing I got was a little sewing kit that was probably about 6 inches long, had little 2 pair of shears in it, and I think I still have one of those little pairs of shears, one of the little pointed shears. And I remember that little kit, getting that. That was a gift to everybody that was there.
Mhm.
But
Here it says canning, Betty Nickerson, Theta Roof. That's food preparation. Well, certainly, I've been worried because I just don't have anything much to tell you, and I couldn't keep track of the years. I do know that that it was always Theta and Betty that come out on top, but it was always Theta that won on modeling.
Oh, yeah?
She could.
I remember probably when we were at Western, the one thing they kept drilling before you modeled was stand up straight and pull your stomach in.
And hold the shoulders back. Huh?
Yeah, and pull your rear end in.
Oh.
Yeah. And I guess I enjoyed modeling, so that probably had something to do with it. So.
Well, no, you know, there's always certain things. I'll tell you if you want. Oh, looky here. This is Calvin's. Is this all ours, or is this?
The whole county,
The whole
isn't it?
county.
That was up there.
Well, I know there was one thing. Why you girls won what you did was there was explicit things that you was not to put silk on cotton or, do things like that, put bows. And that's something that we followed.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there was several that was disqualified because they would put a ribbon or something on a cotton dress.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And another thing was, of course, that was when you made the little red wool dress.
I can picture that. Yeah.
Yeah, that little red wool dress. And I know one thing. In your dress, your wool was kind of a teal, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
And such beautiful wool as
Oh,
you
it was
have
gorgeous.
then that you can't
Maybe
get
it's something terrible.
And the judge said when they looked at that dress, no girl that size or age could do that sewing. So that's when I called you in and had you do some sewing, handwork for them, and you got your prize. They said I had done it.
What?
Now,
I think I remember
I
that.
didn't do any of the sewing.
No.
I didn't remember. That's one story I wanted to get on tape.
Well, that's it. Give the year, and that must have been the 4th year, wasn't it? Wool
Well, I guess
dresses?
third, maybe.
Maybe
Third
it
year
was.
wool.
You had polio, didn't you?
Not yet. See, I got 2 good legs there.
Yeah. Okay. I
But
thought.
I know she was about as big as a 6-year-old.
Uh-huh.
And that little red wool dress was.
Yeah.
And they insisted that no one had done that kind of work.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, all right, I'll have her do some for you. And so she sat there, and I don't know, I suppose you did hemming and
I can't remember this at all.
you
So
can.
you just go ahead, tell it.
Well, whatever they asked, this must have been at the fair, when he was exhibiting at the fair. Would have to be, wouldn't it?
I think after they quit up at Western, we did go to the fairgrounds for
I think it was
Achievement Day.
yes. And it was in that building over to Kalamazoo.
Uh-huh.
And your dress was hanging up, and all of them, and they were judging them.
Mm-hmm.
And then's when, I don't know who the judge was. It certainly wouldn't have been Miss Lindsay, you see. It would
No.
have to be outside.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, that work was too good for anyone that small or young. Of course, they figured you was young. And I said, all right, you ask what you want her to sew, and I'll call her in. And you did. You came in and you sat down and you did what they asked you to do.
Mm-hmm.
That took care of that. You got a blue ribbon. So,
Well, I had the best leader in the country. So.
well, no,
Yeah.
it wasn't. But I do think the thing of it was that just like in the beginning, I said I don't want anyone that isn't willing to take out.
Yeah, right.
That was the first thing.
You do
And
it,
you
and
do
you
it,
do it
and
right.
you do it right. Well, I think some of the leaders allowed them to do things. It wasn't, and you had your rules right there.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that after a while, there was some of them that was weeded out, that they didn't want to put in that much time and effort. There was you and Betty and Ardith and Liella.
Yeah.
And I don't remember so much about Myra. I think whether she stayed through,
I don't believe she stayed as long.
I don't think she did either.
No.
And Ardith, I don't know whether Ardith stayed all the way through.
Well, those habits have stuck with me through my whole lifetime.
Well,
If I do some sewing, I do it right, or else
you
I don't do it.
You measure your seams, and I do too. I put a notch in my thing, and I walk down here, and I pin. I did. I don't do anything now.
Yeah.
As Peggy knows,
Well, you had that all basted that last script.
Well, I just couldn't see. I can't see.
Mm-hmm.
And black, of all things.
Mhm.
Now, I've got a smock cut out. I hadn't opened that machine for over 3 years. Well, this summer, I'm going to try to get back on a little plain cotton sewing, because I can't see well enough. This eyelid hangs down. Now, Ralph had told me before that that couldn't be done, or it was a major thing. But now he told me at Easter time that it could be. Well, my eye is almost covered. And, of course, this is the eye that hasn't been operated on yet. This one has, and also the laser used on it for the other time.
Saying the
But
same thing.
but my seeing is very poor, and I have to use the magnifying glass, and it isn't very good to hold your book here and your magnifying glass, because you get that a little off kilter and your
It blurs.
yes. Now I get the Reader's Digest in the large print and other little magazine, but I'm having such a time with that. They send me one in big print and one in small print, and of all things. And I miss my sewing. Now I can read, and I asked Ralph if there was any reason that if I had hurt my eyes with reading. He said, no, you can't.
Oh.
You can't hurt them, but you
Is
just
that right?
can't see very good.
Well, they get blurry
Oh,
after...
yes, this eye, and I'm telling you, not being able to sew is something that just irks me, and all the things I want, all the materials and stuff that I've got, and then when you go down to buy something that you could make out of something that you ripped up, and it's about $15 or $20, and
More.
the way blouses are just ridiculous.
They sure are. $40, $50.
Yeah.
Simple one.
Well, I'm so glad that you girls have got this stuff, because
You want to look at more of the pictures?
How about your cooking groups? You got any cooking stories you remember?
it just doesn't register too much.
You had canning, too.
Did we do pressure? We didn't do pressure cooking. We must have done cold water or hot
Probably.
water.
Yeah.
Because in 1940, on this notation here, canning, Betty Nickerson made a roof. We did that. We did
Made
food
what?
preparation, canning, Betty and myself. Food preparation, myself. And let's see. Basically, though, I think Most years was clothing. But I remember doing, I think we put on a dinner, didn't we?
Yeah,
one-
a dinner party, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, had all the best stuff out.
And didn't Miss Lenzel come?
Yes, she was our guest.
Oh, yes, that
Mhm.
rings a bell.
Uh-huh. Right there in the dining room.
Yes.
In your,
Mhm.
That's, you see, this here,
that's part of it.
that
Yeah.
through was the dining room, a little bit of a hole. And so then when we fixed this, why we took that out. And of course I wanted that wall, but I was working over to Burgess's, and when I got home, my guy and Leo Snyder had that wall in there. As a rule, I could get what I wanted or something, but that was one thing I couldn't. He told me very forcibly that that was in there and it was going to stay. Because there was no place for the refrigerator.
Oh.
See,
yeah.
it had to be there for the refrigerator.
Uh-huh.
Well,
Plus it made a support for the ceiling too, probably.
you know my whole house is cracking.
Is it?
The railroad, whether that's it or not, just
Yeah,
like out here,
mhm.
the cement, there's cracks in some of that cement. And of course, Guy will soon be gone 18 years, and things haven't been done that what he would have done all that time.
And you said Bert Harrison owned this
Oh,
when,
yes.
when you came to town, and what year?
This
20?
was an old shack. Let's see, what was the man's name? Shed, no. Sheep, or wolf, or something.
Sheep shed?
He owned this place, and it was just a shack. And that right in there was the kitchen, and
Betty's bedroom was the kitchen.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
you see how that roof goes down? That was like a shed.
Yeah.
And that kitchen here. All that Bert did, paid so much for a lot of things, put in the bathroom and the furnace and the cement site, driveway. And what was the name of those people that did the carpenter work? Lived out here. He,
Not, the one that did our garage floor. Greenman.
no,
not him.
but way before that.
Oh.
The old family.
Hmm.
He's the one that fought for building the new schoolhouse, the brick one.
Huh. Oh, I wish you could think of that name.
Well, you know just as well it's an old family.
Hmm.
And he was so tight and so hateful and tried to keep anything new where any money was spent on the school.
Bert designed this archway little porch out here.
No, that we put that on.
You put
several
that
years.
on.
Yes, that was just open. It was open. And Guy put the other bedroom on for Ralph.
Yes, I remember.
And
when
of
you
course
did that.
And he built the porch on the back too.
Oh,
didn't he?
yes. And he put the garage, of course. He just got the garage enlarged and the metal siding on when he was working up to the lumber yard, Carroll, don't you know?
Oh.
Oh.
And that's after Guy had retired.
Mhm.
See, he had 3 extensions, and then he retired, and he retired the 1st of January, because his birthday was the 3rd of January. He
What
worked,
year was he born?
89.
Okay.
I was born in 88. Or 98. He was born in I was born 1898 in November, and he was born in 1899 in January.
Okay.
So, and Audra was born in October, and Ralph in January.
Mm-hmm.
So, he told everyone that he and his dad had married older women.
Oh.
I was 30, I was 1 month older than Guy, and Audra was 2 months older, 2 or 3 months older than Ralph, but when they went to the courthouse to get their marriage license, of course, Judge Hatch, I guess they gave Ralph a pretty hard time. Well, I'm just so glad that you because you girls are going to be able, there's Betty, and this is, that fellow that was,
Oh, yeah. Can't remember now. Was it a Brown or?
no,
It was
That'd make a good picture. If you
Paul
guys-
Smith. Paul Smith.
Keep looking there. Oh, I want to get this stuff out too, I guess, for my picture.
Yeah.
oh, you aren't going to put a picture of me in there.
This would be for my scrapbook. Don't worry about it.
Paul Smith. Now see here they're stacked up ready.
Is that Betty?
Yeah, that's Betty right there.
Who-
One thing I remember about going with Miss Linzel to Michigan State, you had to wear a hat. I had to go buy a hat. Now, here's Betty right here. This is the whole group that went to Chicago. Which it's hard to pick them out anymore, but that coat, the coat is different. I think we
Well,
had to
I'll
go.
tell you, I was up to the study club Tuesday, and the chorus from the school gave a program.
Oh,
There was two boys, but I thought there was just one because I didn't see. I was quite up in front, but they all had pants or blue jeans or sloppy shoes, without any laces in them, or it was just two girls that had dresses on.
yeah,
I don't care what you say. I think it's ridiculous.
yeah. I agree.
I don't see how they can have any pride. A boy goes by here, and I think it must be Culver or Culver's grandson.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
His white boots don't have any laces in, and well,
That's the style, I guess.
I guess it is.
yeah.
But how can you have any pride when you look like that? You girls.
I don't think they do.
I don't either.
No. Anyway, that's
Well, I'm glad you.
that's the group that went to Chicago. And I remember having to give a talk after I came back from one trip. And I think it was at Western,
I-
in that big auditorium of some sort.
Wow.
But aren't you glad you did those things?
Oh, yeah, right.
Really?
I remember something, and I'm surprised you haven't said anything about it yet. Remember when Miss Patton was our home ec teacher at school?
Yeah.
Okay, now what does that bring to mind?
Well,
With Leala.
I don't know, but I remember something said about whether it was. I know Betty was there. Or what they insinuated that they knew more than she did.
Yeah.
And I guess she did. They did.
Yeah.
They did better.
Well, Leala put the sleeves in the wrong armhole, so they didn't fit. So Roseman said, "Ease her in, Leala." Remember that?
No,
Oh, I
don't.
do. I almost
Oh.
said something a
Yeah.
while ago here.
Ease her in, yeah.
I don't remember that.
Because we laughed about that
And-
time and time again at 4-H meetings. Ease her in, Leala.
I do know that whether it was, I know Betty was in on it, and I don't know whether it was Artis or who it was. Anyway, it doesn't sound like Artis, and sounds very much like Betty.
Yeah.
But they insinuated that they knew more than she did.
Yeah. Another thing I remember about sewing at school, we all had to use the same thread. But regardless of what color material you had, we only threaded the machine with white, and everybody used it.
Up to school.
Yeah. It was too much bother to change the thread. We only had
Well, there was one thing about the silver thimble, my silver thimble. anyone that could use it that wanted to, but you had to account for it before you left.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Can you see that, Lydia?
It's the one she just took.
Well, who's that old lady? Well, I never did anything that I got more satisfaction out of.
Is that right?
I never have done anything that I had as much satisfaction as I did at the 4-H.
That's a great statement right there. Glad we got that on tape.
Because there was so much came from it, you know, and I really have always been glad that I had the privilege of being a leader for that. And that's what I think about Neva Vosberg. Certainly she was a shining star.
Devoted.
Yeah, yeah, all the years. Did you go to the funeral?
We were in Florida,
Oh,
so I missed
well,
it. I feel real bad about it, too.
I didn't want to go to the funeral, but I wanted to be sure that I went up to the funeral home and signed the record. And so I did about 10 o'clock before the funeral.
Well, I must have just missed you. I was there too,
Were you?
about 11. Then you saw the bouquet from President and Mrs. Bush.
Well, I didn't notice that at the time or know about it at the time. Which one was that?
Well,
I thought her flowers were perfectly beautiful, especially the caskets.
Oh, I wish I went home and told Jenks what it was, and brown and yellow and bronze something. I can't remember now.
Most of the flowers were on the order of the pink and rose and that.
This was real different.
And I thought she looked just exceptionally good. I couldn't believe that. That's what I wanted to do because...
She had her little 4-H pin on her lapel.
Well, I noticed the little flowers, which must have been grandchildren, up in the casket. But I thought she looked so nice. You know, after when they first started the undertaker here, Langland's, all I could think of was the funny paper, you know, about the oh heavens, this is what embarrasses me is
They could
the
die.
undertaker, you know, in the funny papers, how they had this long-tailed thing on, and it seemed like none of their people that they in the casket, they had their head reared up or something. And of course, before we had been so used to Schmidt and with and they were so nice.
Huber
yeah,
and
well,
Wendell and
They were
Ed.
almost artists at it. weren't they?
Yeah, they were really good at it. I noticed that too. I didn't like Langland's funeral. There was no personal.
No, you
touch,
no,
like
and
we
we had
had.
been used to it.
Right.
You see, when Guy died, Schmidt had just taken over up here, and we never had met him or anything.
Oh.
So, of course, when asked from Banff, why, for Wendell Hoyt, you see, because Guy's body had to come back. And Wendell took care of all of that, clear up until after he was buried. And then he came to me and he said, Lydia, this is Chuck Smith's part, and he will take you to see about the insurance and all of that stuff. I said, well, I'm sorry, I never even, of course, I didn't think on a lot of things. I didn't know anything as far as that's concerned.
You're in a daze.
But Smith was certainly good and everything. I just was that I supposed, of course, that Wendell was, in fact, I didn't know about Smith had bought in. But I can remember that how nice everybody looked. And of course, Guy looked just marvelous, but there was no reason why he wouldn't.
Yeah,
But I certainly was
What
surprised.
took him? I don't remember.
Heart attack.
Did he have a heart attack?
Yeah, I kissed him good night at 10 o'clock and or 8 o'clock, and at 10 they came up and got me, and he was dead. But certainly I had every attention and everything that was done for me.
And he was in the hospital.
Oh, yes,
when he died.
and we were planning on coming home, flying home. See, we were on a conducted tour, and they had gone on, but the next tour that came back, or came through, that leader came right up to the hospital and to me, and they took me into Calgary in a taxi cab because I wasn't able to get in there in time.
You were
to
in
touch the train.
Canada, and,
Yeah.
and where was the hospital? In
Banff.
Oh.
And
Did you
is
notice
this our room?
this item? 25 cents.
Yeah.
What's that?
Where's here for 25 cents? Accessories cost $5.
It's like Dorothy Cummings had to have a new bra for, of course, hers.
Chin. Yeah.
And what was that? $275.
Theta could drive it.
I don't think
Her
she's...
brother. Does he live up
Jim,
here?
yeah, he lives in the old
You
place.
never see a thing moving around there.
Well, in the morning he's out.
Oh, is
He
it?
goes up and gets
Well,
mail.
of course, all I see is a church on Sunday, and
yeah.
it has been cleaned up around there.
Oh, yeah.
It was such a...
He's done
Yeah.
a lot of
But
that.
he lives there alone.
I think so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you came to town, was Dr. Bates still
No, he
alive?
had just died, and Dr. Broad and Mrs. Broad were here.
And where did they live then? You remember?
Mrs. Hamilton's apartment,
Oh, okay.
come to think about it. And they had adopted this little girl. And of course, Mrs. Broad was, she was just a fanatic on everything about that child. And she was about the same age as Ralph.
Oh.
Oh.
And she used to insinuate that I didn't know how to take care of Ralph or anything. And I guess I figured I knew as much as she did.
Now, what year did you come here then?
In November the 11th of 29, I think.
29. So Ralph was about
Just 20.
3 years old or so. Two
Oh,
or
no.
Two,
wasn't.
2 years old.
Uh-huh.
Not quite 2.
And Betty I started her to school because she'd been to kindergarten in Pontiac, you know.
Mm.
And she came home with the whooping cough and the chicken pox for Ralph when he was just less than a year old. And then we moved down. Guy went to Chicago, and we put our goods into storage, and I went down and stayed with my mother and dad until the 11th of November. But Guy was here and found a place for us to live, and we lived in that house. We called it the Vinstraw house, you know, where that's what they called it. The bank had taken it over. And Vinstraw, wasn't he in the dairy or something up here?
I've never
I
heard
don't know.
that name before.
Well, that's
Where's the house? Was it or
It's
is it?
where it's right there. Well, you know where Grandpa Dave's house was, the big house. Well, it's the next one. These people has. I think she drives the school bus, and has.
You mean over here where Pete and Laverna Mack used to live?
No.
No.
Well, you know where Earl Taylor built that little
Yes.
bungalow. Well, they built that while we was living in the house on this side. There was Mrs. Saunders'
Yeah.
brick house, and then Taylor's built that house,
Yes.
and then we were in the other.
Oh.
Oh, where's
Mrs. Verney. Yes.
Yeah,
used to
Mrs.
live.
Verney,
Oh, okay.
Mrs. Verney and her sister,
Yeah.
they sold their place, and they moved in on us with
Oh.
a grand piano and Ralph a baby.
Yeah.
But they were nice and we got along just fine.
And then how long did you live there before
Well, just
you...
a year.
Oh,
before-
then moved here.
Moved here. A year from the time we came till we moved in here. And as
So-
soon as this place was remodeled, why
What's
then
your house number here?
220.
220 West Maple. Okay.
Then you lived in the house between Mrs. Saunders and Mrs. Verney?
Well,
No,
No.
in Mrs. Verney's house.
Then Mrs. Oh,
Mrs.
okay.
Vernon,
Yeah.
they bought it
Yeah.
while we were living there,
Uh-huh.
and I guess the bank owned the place. You see,
Oh.
it had been foreclosed, and
Uh-huh.
Eldred Sinclair,
Sinclair Eldred.
Sinclair Eldred.
I don't know.
The bank had closed. You see, Mr. and Mrs. Sinclair, Mr. and Mrs. Eldred. It was. What was their last name? Was their last name Eldred or Sinclair?
I guess it was Sinclair. Eldred and Catherine
Sinclair.
Okay.
And they lived in the house.
Kitty Corner where Marion Purse lived.
Yeah.
Son of us
Oh,
lived there now.
Oh.
And Catherine came over and called on me, and they had that downstairs living room, or it was a bedroom. She had it repapered and painted because she said I should have it for. And the other little bedroom was for Betty and Ralph. Ralph was in a baby bed, and Betty was in a twin bed. And this old lady that lived down the street, what was her name? She was German, and
South of Saunders?
yeah, just beyond Saunders.
The ones we used to call two ducks.
That's who she. And Ralph would ride his kitty thing, and she just was crazy about him. And she never liked children, they said. But
Oh.
she liked him, and so did Mr. Saunders.
Yeah.
And he called him Jimmy.
Oh.
He didn't like Betty, but Jimmy was, because he was
Harry Saunders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then we moved up here, and we paid $25 a month rent for this, really like a new place.
Mm-hmm.
And Oral and Hessel wanted it, but they didn't feel that they could afford $25 a month. And said, oh, it's just too bad all those rich, smart people move in town, take everything over. My Lord, we was about as hard.
And did they live next door here? Oral and Hessel? Where did they live then?
Well,
No, that was
moved-
Mrs. Blodgett.
They
that
moved in with Mr. and Mrs. Blodgett,
Mm.
and then they bought this place over here where Moon's lived,
Oh.
and that's when all the years. That, Well, we sold our place in Pontiac. It was a 5-room bungalow, supposedly for $4,500. Was friends of our neighbor next door that we were bought so much of, and we never got a cent down. We was foolish enough to sell it without anything down.
What a deal.
Well, it was those friends, and
Yeah.
we thought, well, of course, at that time, you thought we were brought up, if people said something, then that's what it was. Well, we learned that the hard way.
Oh, you never got any?
No, and it took us a year and a half to get them out, and the taxes were in the arrear, and it was so dirty. Vera and her husband helped us. We dug the grease and stuff out of the cupboards and that. When we came here, do you want a chair to sit down?
No, I'm gonna clean this register before you fall down in.
Well, I tried it once and it don't work. I took it off and thought, now I mustn't forget that, turned right around and fell into it.
Ooh.
When we came here, the bank's closed. right away. And we brought our money and put it in the bank, and so it closed. And we wanted a new refrigerator. We went up to Sears. And they said, do you have credit? Oh, yes, we had lots of credit because we always paid cash. They said, you don't have
That's
Oh,
the bad
boy.
part about that.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
But I don't care. We bought a new second-hand base burner from Snyder, Bitchy Snyder, over there.
Fred?
No, Fred's brother.
Oh.
Well, anyway, you bought a base burner. I had a beautiful gas stove. And it was out in Grandpa Day's barn, and we had a kerosene, these, what did you have, 3-burner kerosene stove?
Oh, the oven on one side?
You know, it didn't have an oven.
Oh.
You put the oven on if you wanted.
Yeah.
And a laundry stove, and that kitchen. Ralph learned to ride his little tricycle because he got up in the dining room and let it go down and went down like that. Then he crawled up to the sink and pumped the pump and made a felon on his hand. But you know, I always liked Climax. And we had an outside toilet. Just think of coming here with a child. Outside toilet, I broke him on a slop jar back of the kitchen door.
Yeah.
And a laundry stove and everything like that. But
Kerosene.
I've always liked Climax.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was nice. Gertrude and Vern lived in the little house, you know, over there.
On Watson Street. Mm-hmm.
And
Tom Martin lived
in the
There,
brick house.
in the brick house.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And we moved up here then, when just a year later. And this is, what did you call it? Moved in with us, she and her sister.
Oh, Blodgett?
No, you see, with the grand piano, I said.
Oh, Vernie?
Vernie.
Mrs. Vernie
Yeah.
and her sister. Mrs. Reed, was that her
Mrs.
sister?
Reed, yeah.
Okay.
Can you imagine two old, and Mrs. Vernie's husband, in that place with two
It was a small house anyway.
Well, yes, you see, just had the 2-bedroom, then upstairs was only one room was finished, and we had to put beds up there. You know. But we got along, and it didn't last very long. That was only a couple of months, you know, till we could get in this house.
Mm-hmm.
So this place really has always been ours.
Been home.
And when I had the mastoids, why, Bert didn't charge us any rent.
Oh. He owned the house next door.
He lived there.
Yeah.
He and
Yeah.
Lawrence
Lawrence who?
Vosberg.
Oh. Before
Lawrence.
he was married to Florence.
Oh, yes. It's when Lawrence was teaching up to the school.
School. Before he married
And,
Florence.
Yeah. Well, this place then we wanted to buy after, I think about 5 years, we wanted to buy it. And Bert said no, he didn't want to sell. So we went to see about a house over on Church Street, I guess it was, a big 2-story house. She belonged to Study Club, the woman did.
Mrs. Hibbard?
Hibbard.
Okay.
Well, when we looked at it, and Bert was working in the bank
Mm-hmm.
at the time. We never said a word to anybody. We went over and looked at the house and came home and decided that wasn't what we were looking for. And that night, Bert came over. Somebody told him that we were looking at that house. And he said he would sell us the place. So the next day, Guy and Bert went over to Kalamazoo and signed the paper.
Now that house was a York house, wasn't it? The Hibbard house?
I don't know about that.
Oh, okay.
But it wasn't what we wanted, you know.
Uh-huh. Right next to the tracks, right? That's the one you mean? At the end of Church Street, north end of Church Street?
No. This was across from where Mrs. Nelson lived.
Oh,
that.
where Babbitt's
Oh, could
place
be.
now.
No, farther on up.
Oh,
Hmm.
across from,
Well, maybe it.
Nelson. See, there's,
well, the Betzes lived there in that next house at
Yeah,
one
where
time. There was a
Osborne's
fire
lived.
where
Uh-huh.
Osborne's lived.
mm-hmm.
Well, it's farther on.
North?
North, uh-huh.
Farther north. Not where,
Sharpstein's?
Well, I don't know any of those
Okay.
people now. You know,
Okay.
they're that big, one of those big houses.
the one just
Not one on
south
the
of
drive.
where Coot lived. Coot lived on the corner. Jim Coot lived
Yeah,
on
I
the corner.
think so on this.
On the corner. And
Mhm.
you lived in, or you looked at the one just south of it.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't know. That was one of the old families, you know. But,
Uh-huh.
Herb Pierce, did he live there?
Well, you see, that
Mm.
a lot of that don't mean anything to me.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
well, I just,
We've been here a long time, but still the old families. But I don't know. I've been, you know, you wondered, but if Climax was home and we were almost sent to Flint,
huh.
I've always thought the Lord must have been on our side. We didn't have to go to Flint.
Now, did you watched the house being torn down
Oh,
over here
yes,
then?
yes, that was when let's see, Marion.
Yeah, she lived there at one
Yeah,
time.
Marion lived in that. And at Christmas time, she had a wreath with a red bow on every one of those windows hanging on the outside.
Oh, huh.
Yeah.
Bet that was beautiful.
It was.
Yeah.
And of course, we were here when the barn burned that belonged to that.
Oh, back in here.
Uh-huh. It
Oh,
was a terrible fire.
I heard about it, but and Bernie had a old mail wagon or something.
Yeah,
in
that
it,
burned
didn't
up in it.
he? Yeah. Huh. That was in back of Grandpa Dave's place, then, or where was the barn?
The barn belonged to
The house.
the house.
I
It-
see.
Oh, I don't remember.
I don't either. Must have been before we.
Probably burned before we were old enough to remember.
That it meant too much. Yes, it was. Well, this has certainly been home to us.
Now, did they move part of that house out in the country or something, or did they tear the whole thing down?
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I really don't know about that. I know there was a pretty open stairway, you know, an old, like my family. The car, mother was a car, and they were old families, just like the roofs, don't you know? And their house,
C-A-R-R?
C-A-I-R,
Okay.
their home is like out here when you go to Galesburg, that big white house with a cupola on top.
Blake's, Betty Blake's
Yeah,
house.
yeah. Now that looks a lot like Mother's,
Oh,
but Dad's, the Bennetts, and of course our name was always spelt with an I, which I don't know why, but that's just the way it is.
B-E-N-N-I-T?
I-T-T.
Oh.
That's
Oh,
that's
yeah.
been. Now this is me. That's Marvin, and that's Lissa with Mother and Dad, and here is Grandfather and Grandfather Bennett. Now that's
Oh, that's quite an old house.
oh
well,
isn't that pretty?
that was lovely, and a family bought that, and it's all kept up and you know, which makes you feel
Restored
good,
it.
just like
Bet.
the roof place.
Yeah.
I've been so glad to
Yeah.
think that that was done. Now, what are they going to do about that restaurant? Are they
Gee,
going to
I
let
don't know. She said if she didn't sell it by Labor Day, she was going to close it up. That's what I heard last.
Well, it's too bad because I was so glad that
To see it come to life. Huh?
Yeah. And
It's
that's
too
the
bad
way.
they didn't restore the one that used to be across the corner yet.
I know it.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I
What
can
was
remember the house where Marion used to
Oh.
live there on the hill, where the apartment is now.
You know, I think it's something that they're going to be awfully sorry about. A lot of this historical
things
stuff
down.
that hasn't
Mm-hmm.
been kept. There's some criticism about the library. Let's see, who was it the other day at Study Club? Of course, Irma was quite critical about trying to fix it up. And I said, if you're not helping, just don't criticize. If you don't, there's quite a little memorial money, and if you don't bid for something, you don't get it. That's all there is to it.
She didn't want it enlarged.
Oh, she thought it was too much money, but she don't get it for anything. So
Mhm.
why do you criticize? She was critical too over that desk because it cost $1,000.
Of the oak desk in there.
Yes, I said, well, Irma, that
Hmm.
didn't cost you anything. Just because we worked in the library when we was down there and carried in the kerosene, why go on about that now?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, Dorothy has meant an awful lot for that library.
Mhm.
She's put in an awful lot of time. Of
Oh,
course,
she does.
an excellent time.
Oh,
I
know
feel
it.
I feel sorry about that I can't do it, but the only time since I've been sick that I did work up there, and I'm not capable of it now. Too much has changed. Well, Maxine was there with me. Well, it's just too bad that Maxine can't.
Oh,
Either,
she was the
because-
link.
Yeah.
Everybody knew what was going on if they could have Maxine there to ask.
She just isn't there at all. honey.
No. Oh, she's greatly missed.
Well, I'm in favor of giving him a little rat poison.
I think she keeps him doped.
Maybe
Asleep.
Well, but she can't get away at all anymore, can
Oh, that's too
she?
bad.
It was for a
Is
while.
that an inherited thing, do you think? That
Oh, yes.
his mother
His
was-
mother died in the sanitarium over here to Kalamazoo.
His mother was who now? What was her name?
I think
Well, she
yeah.
graduated she was in the same class that Gertrude Martin and Jim and Barbara are the same age. And she was a brilliant person. Well, Jim was brilliant.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
The
really.
same as Bates.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Jim Bates,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
He was discharged.
Mhm.
Well,
Oh, boy.
it's too bad. Well, I don't think I'm being much help to you.
Oh, we're getting a lot of old stories.
Yes, that's what we're after.
Yeah.
Here's wool dresses.
No, I have a picture of me in that wool dress. I hate it. I think the only time I wore it was when I had to style it. I remember styling that wool dress in about 80, 90 degree weather at Michigan State. with a wool dress on.
right.
It was
Oh.
hot.
Oh,
Anyway.
was it because it itched you or what?
Yes, wool irritates me.
Mm-hmm.
William Kinsley, he was Kinley.
Yeah.
He was the one that I was thinking about that Betty was in 4-H sometime.
Yeah, he
Mhm,
uh-huh.
mhm.
He was in when I was in too. Because that was one of the trips that I made to Chicago.
Let's see.
And these are all taken at Michigan State.
Boy, look at the hats. Now, Betty had a big hat. A picture.
Then when you had a complete costume, you had to have a hat.
Well,
I see about one hat in church every Sunday out of the whole
Well, there's just,
congregation.
sure, you had to, for Easter, you had to have your hat.
Right.
There's nothing else.
Did you wear, you wore that navy blue dress?
Yeah, that was the
Didn't
dress
you?
that you,
That's the
that you
dress
had.
that Lydia made for
Uh,
Betty and I for our demonstration.
Oh, did I make them?
Oh.
Yes, you
They
made
were
them.
dark blue.
Dark blue fabric of
Were they
What's
silk,
on
weren't they?
that,
Weren't they?
Well, it was similar. There's another picture in here of Betty and I in those dresses with our famous buttonhole.
Oh, there. There's
Yeah,
there.
right.
Ah.
Oh, yes, you made them.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
And you know, those charts
There it is.
that we had the standard and we stood the charts up and zip, zip, zip. We had buttonholes done in 2 minutes. And
Yeah, well, let's see, one worked on the sewing machine and the other, and then one was bound buttonholes and
the other was
that tailored.
tailored buttonholes.
Do you ever make those anymore?
Not if I can help it.
I never was good with that either.
Yeah, explain the difference between bound buttonholes and tailored buttonholes.
Well, tailored or bound button, no. How was it? You had these two strips, one strip put here
That's
and here.
tailored.
That's
That was
the
a
tailored.
tailored one. Yeah.
And-
And then you turned them to the other side and sewed the
yeah,
ends down.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the bound is a little square,
A square.
rectangle.
Mhm.
And then you turn,
Pull the whole patch through.
yeah,
Okay.
right.
Okay. But they both sort of look like a
Well,
They look about the same
when
when
you
they're
get
done.
done.
The tailored, I think, was a little easier. to
well,
do.
that other. I honestly, Peggy, I can't believe that suit or that jacket fits you as good as it did. I loved that, and I had more pleasure. I wore it for 2 years and then outgrew it.
Oh,
This is my oral Lydia suit.
Yeah,
Oh, is it?
It was oral.
Oh.
What is that? jacket is an 8, and
I
it just
don't know.
on the back, and then it had slacks. The
color.
only thing yes, and I loved it, and I wore it so much. And then when I, as I say, I don't weigh only a couple of pounds more than I have, but I certainly have shifted.
It's in different places.
I do a little bit of sewing for it now and then. I keep telling her I don't want any money.
Oh, my
and so
Lord,
she gives
the
me these
interest
beautiful
rate.
things.
Yeah.
Well, that knitted is just the right color for it. Of course, you just have the slacks, and I wanted a skirt so bad, but I never could match the skirt.
Yeah, that's a pretty color.
Well, it was such a wearable suit, you know, and it just really it's got a lot more miles in it yet.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Well, I think, is there any, I don't know of any other things that I can tell you, just that,
Well, they're just copies that we made for something or other.
yeah. But I'll tell you, I just didn't have anything, and it's worried me because I figured I just didn't have anything much to tell you, you know.
Well, we filled up the whole tape. Just about talking about something or other. So. It stopped there for a while. I don't know just what we missed.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that you've got these prints. Now, did you get some of this from Neva, or did you?
No, this is stuff I collected myself. I've got a lot of other 4-H that's more recent. Anything that happened in 4-H that was in the paper, I cut it out and saved it.
That's the thing. Here,
So,
this is an older book that
there's some
Oh, that is a star.
It's a nice
There.
picture of Ralph.
Yeah,
The boys in the
I bet he
service.
wishes he looked like that now.
Yeah.
Oh, he doesn't look too far from that.
No,
He's
he hasn't
very
changed
well.
much. He looks a lot like Guy. I remember Guy sitting in that chair right there, and how many nights he had to wait for supper because we weren't through sewing yet.
Oh, there, that's the kind of story I want to
Well,
hear.
he never,
He never complained.
No.
Never.
no,
No.
I suppose, no, he never, when you girls wrote that, I don't remember. I suppose I had the stuff fixed, but no, he never. This is a cute picture. I've always been awful glad of that.
Yeah.
That was when Betty got her teachers. I'll tell you, Carol needed a master's degree with Betty. See how long she and two other girls and a fellow went to Michigan State.
Uh-huh.
Drove in every morning, you know. Of course, she took what she could at Western and Michigan State. And now she's got her master's. And of course, if she just stayed in Battle Creek, she was fine.
Uh-huh. But out there it doesn't help?
No.
Huh.
Of course, all she does is sub.
Uh-huh.
And
Huh. And this is the
And
whole
did
family
you see
except
in the-
Carol.
did you see in the paper where they're asking the Battle Creek to give some of the older teachers $5,000 and retire? And then-
Ted's in on that.
Is he going to?
He wants to quit teaching, and this might be his out.
Oh, well, that's fine, but
Yeah.
most of them it don't work
Yeah.
out. But what I was thinking, well, now, are they going to get a bunch of young teachers when these older teachers
No,
are
I think
so
they're
much?
just going to have less teachers, but I'm not sure, really.
Well, of course, it's been kind of bad because Betty and Carol was doing so well, and then out there they're having trouble with their lumber yard, of course.
Yeah, she said people aren't building
No,
much.
because it was the oil
Yeah,
from Texas and
and the interest rates went up.
yes, and everything.
Oh, there's Fried and Cedric. Guy.
Mhm. And this is
Who's that?
was Nidra from Athens. She was president, and Guy was vice president, and that's of the county. And this is she's past grand matron.
Boy,
Here's
oh,
Guy
looks so
and
pretty.
Nidra. They're red lace dresses, and this is me, I guess. Mine was white, was just like the red. We were not officers. We were just helping in.
I remember making a white lace formal for Jetty. Did you ever remember seeing her wear a white lace formal
No.
for Star? Got it all done just like the pattern, had a boat neck like this. And she put it on, it fit her real nice, and she said, that neck has got to come down. And I had to take that facing off and that lace. And you know, when you stitch something, it's stitched, you know. Oh,
Deborah.
Oh, that's cute. Yeah. It's a nice picture. of
this is
Guy.
who?
Debbie. That's Ralph and Audra's daughter.
Oh, yes.
Uh-huh.
These are old pictures.
Cute.
But I just, there's
That's
Audra.
Audra.
You see, Ralph and Audra went to Michigan State at the same time, but they didn't know each other because Ralph was earning his, he was working in the girls' dorm, and he went on a scholarship, and Audra was in a different class, don't you know? And they didn't know each other. They met when Ralph was the best man to one of his fraternity, and Audra was a bridesmaid in Battle Creek, and from that time on, why?
That's the way Queen and Alice Mack met over in England. She was the bridesmaid and he was the best man.
That's the way Pam and Bruce Blakeman met at Rosalie's wedding, I think. That sort of thing
Oh, my
happened.
golly.
These are Betty and Carol's, aren't they?
Yeah, this is this is Craig, the youngest one. He's 10 years younger than Claudia. And here's Curtis, these two. Here's Craig again.
Yeah. Because I thought I had a picture that looked a little bit like that. There's Betty.
Yeah, you remember?
Is that her graduation picture?
Oh, I guess. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
That was a black velvet dress with a collar.
With a lace collar.
And there's Vera's son.
Oh.
Vera is your sister?
Yeah, she's 8 years younger than Missy and I. She's the one in North Carolina. There's Merrill,
Oh,
that
I
was
heard.
here.
Yes,
And
he was here
he
for
was-
your
uh-huh.
party, wasn't he?
I hadn't seen him since his mother died, 10 years. He's in
Merrill
New
is whose son?
York. My twin sister.
Your twin sister's son.
He was the one that,
And her name is,
her name was Brockway,
what's her first name?
Melissa.
Melissa.
Of course, we always called her Alyssa until later. But here's Ralph and the fraternity they've gone to.
Look at that necktie.
How about that? Polka dot.
Yeah.
And the white socks.
Yes.
That's an awful good picture of him,
It is.
though. Here is a picture that Jenny and I had. Guy and I had this picture, and Jenny and Claude had theirs, and sent them to Carol while he was in prison, and they cut the men's heads out.
Oh. Huh. Wonder why they did that. Was this?
That's Marvin. That's my brother.
Did he get them when he was in prison?
No.
He never got
He
the
never
pictures.
got them. Huh.
Or I won't say about that. Maybe he did, but he never got any of Betty's packages.
No.
No.
And she sent one every 2 weeks.
Oh boy.
She never had a sign of a word from him, but she never doubted with what,
But he'd be
or
back.
he never doubted with what she was writing. Here's my dad and mother, and the twins, and my brother, and Vera. Of course, she came along behind.
Look at the big bone.
Oh, yes.
One of these is you?
Yeah, can't you tell?
No.
This one.
That one's you, huh?
He was at your 90th
Yeah.
party, wasn't
Yeah, and
he?
he's 93.
Oh.
You came from a family of...
No, Dad died at 72.
Oh,
Mother
really?
died, lived long, but, kind of like Gertrude. Not one of their family ever lived to be 80. And she always said, well, she didn't, when Guy wasn't feeling good when we were working at Burgess, she said, well, that's one thing, I don't have to worry about Vern dying. And I was so worried about Guy. So I said, Vern comes from a long family, and I come from none of ours lived to be 80 years old. And she'll
it's
be
just
90
the
in
opposite.
July.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly going to I'm not going to interfere with her family, but there's Bethel and some that's very close to her, and I want to have just a little party for her. She really doesn't want.
You didn't want that, huh?
That's Claudia.
Uh-huh.
Very good. There's some
Okay.
smocking on that dress.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a picture. Never thought about that.
Yeah, that's great.
Came out good, didn't it?
Right.
This picture.
Is that
Was
taken
like-
here in front of this window?
No, that was in that project where Betty and Carol came back,
Oh.
or when Carol came back.
Uh-huh.
They're on territorial.
Yeah. That's what that was.
Yeah.
Who are these?
Well, these are the two children of Vera. grandchildren.
Oh,
This
your sister's grandchildren.
she graduated from state and then from Michigan U, and she and both girls did, and with high honors. Now she is, well, I think she didn't want to be a nurse. She was a nurse, but she's gone, I think, more in the business part of it.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, there's Ralph, and
Ralph.
he's 4.
Yeah.
Look at his underwear.
Yeah.
Here they are.
At least he didn't have long stockings on. There's Betty and Ralph.
Yeah. She was 4 and a half, and he was a year.
Hmm.
And that's Merrill and Betty, you see. They were just about the same age.
Now this is, which one's Betty?
This is Betty, bald-headed, and Merrill.
That looks like my kids. They were all bald-headed. Yeah. Remember the dolls that Betty and I made for school? The Pilgrim dolls?
Yeah.
Have
you got pictures
I've
of-
got a picture of that, Betty and the dolls. I think.
Have you got a picture of where was
There
Betty
she's
when
8.
this was when we were married 10 years.
Guy really didn't change much over the years. You could still
Oh,
tell.
no.
Uh-huh. Men maybe don't change as much as women do.
When I get to beefing about, oh yes, I wanted to show you this. This is when we went to Thanksgiving when Merrill was in the university there. And we went, this was 1946, and this menu, $3.
Wow.
All that. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Tomato juice, shrimp cocktail.
Well, of course, I suppose you take your
Any of those
choice,
cocktails.
Yeah.
But the Hotel Seymour, Maryland, made. We had some wonderful trips to New York because of Merrill. You know, went to Carnegie Hall, set up in the clear up in the top, but
Because
then
he played, right? Merrill played
piano
piano.
there? Well,
and of course his was the TV or the programs.
his was a what now?
Well, later he wrote and directed for, what do you call it, for the civic stuff at the theaters.
Oh, like the Civic Theater in Kalamazoo, but not in Kalamazoo.
No, bigger than that.
Uh-huh.
But it got so that they couldn't, he was making so much money and everything. And all this civic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You brought my
It's in there. I didn't want to lose anything
Yeah,
out of
that's
it, so I
fine.
put it in the bag.
well, if you girls can
Well,
write up something, I know you. When is the next historical thing?
April 17th, and it's up at the school cafeteria. And Barry Nolan's going to bring his what is it collection, all those little gadgets that you had to guess what they used to be used for. Remember that program he had a while ago? Going to repeat that.
No, I
And
don't.
Greg Murphy's going to show some things that he found when he was remodeling the house there next to the cow catcher. And so is John and Joyce Barkley are going to show some things that they found when they remodeled. And Lou Ann Morgan's going to bring some things. Greg was explaining how they went right back to the petitions, to remodel. And it's just like an archive down in there. You find things way at the bottom, the oldest, and then there'll be some things from a little later years, and maybe a candy wrapper from early 1900s, and so on.
I've got some of that.
Well, bring it. Everybody, the members are supposed to bring, too.
Yeah.
The Eldred place now has other people bought it, and have they got it pretty well? I
Yeah.
haven't been out past there.
No,
I
it's
got-
beautiful. All but the tower. The tower hasn't been painted yet, but the house is really pretty.
You mean on that?
Pointed up the
window.
bricks and repainted the wood parts, and it's very pretty.
Well,
Did they do the inside?
Yeah, yeah.
you know, that wood and stuff wasn't as good as a lot of
No.
that old place out there that we have the
not.
pictures of.
Yeah, it's not like Clemence's house.
And that was, wood was good, and that's the way with the brick house here, you know. Sliding doors and, and all of that and everything. Well, I'm glad that the roof house has been redone, and certainly will, regardless of whether they go on with it. Why?
What were you going to say that you found in your house?
Some old newspapers,
Mm-hmm.
and when we ripped up the old floor covering in the kitchen, there was newspapers underneath that. And I know there's a screwdriver in the bottom of the petition someplace up in when we were doing the hall, because it fell in.
Uh-huh.
But I've got some old newspapers.
You mean where you're at now?
Yeah.
Now, who owned that place?
Max owned it when we bought it. And before that, that's Leroy's and Clean's folks owned it. And before that,
How's she doing?
I don't know. I'd have to look at the abstract.
Did you read the church history that was in the Crescent last week? Because Jetty talked about the minister living there. McChesney, I guess that's her name.
Oh, in that house?
Uh-huh.
No, I didn't associate it with that. But I read it in 2 different times, and I think the TV was on, so
Yeah.
sometimes doesn't all register. But I usually, before I throw those papers out, I read that stuff again.
Yeah.
And cut it out and save it.
Uh-huh.
So, anyway.
Well, it's certainly
We better pack up, I guess, and leave
nice to
video.
see these things that you have.
Do you have pictures from your 90th party yet?
Yeah.
Almost to the end of it. What happens when it gets to the end?
It just stops rolling.
It just stops rolling. Yeah. Because that's the day I left my camera at home that I should have brought it.
Well, these are the pictures that Howard took, and they are excellent. And he sent me this.
The negatives.
Negatives, and I'm going to have just I want more of this one and this.
Yeah.
Aren't those excellent pictures?
Yeah, they are.
Now, Ralph took quite a few, but he just went around.
Like they said toward the end of this interview, what was it? Something like, yeah, it's going to run out and then it's going to stop. And by gosh, that's what happened. Good times and great learnings about 4-H and so much more from the long, storied life of Lydia Nickerson. As always, every week, I want to thank you, listener, for all you do to share the show, support the show, like the show, give us a follow, leave us a review. All of these things help the algorithms and stuff that gets more eyes and ears on this podcast. A little preview for next week. I have what I believe to be the most requested guest that I have had from the different polls and things I put out since the inception of this podcast. Whether you had him as a teacher, a coach, or very likely both, tune in next week for Bob Weese's Jr. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'll talk to you in about a week.